Welcome to Shomach Shavan Adash, your sponsor, Lui Nishmas, Arm Yaakov Shalom, Milei Basitzchok. We're holding Bava Basra of Kuf Nun Vov. The Gemara in Amud Aleph concludes the sugya of a child, a son. When can he sell in Nichsei Aviv? The Gemara says he has to be 20 years old. But the Gemara ends and says, Hichasa Kegidel Bar Menashe, that said that in previous daf, that if he is above 13, and he's Yodea b'maso maton, if he's very wise, he has the wisdom, so then he could sell in Nichsei Aviv, even karkars. This is the maskana of our sugya. There's an old sefer that was printed over 300 years ago, which is called Naftali Sva Rotzon, written by Rav Naftali Hertz Ginsburg. And there in Pashas told us, he connects this Gemara to this week's Pasha. Pashas told us. And he explains that when Eisav is b'moicher the Bechorah, that's a Yerusha he's supposed to get from his father. And therefore, there may be a taino that someone will come afterwards and say, but yet Eisav is not at 20 years old yet. How do we know that? So he does the cheshbon. We know that Yaakov and Eisav were born when Yitzchak was 60 years old. Avraham Avinu lived until the age of 175. And the day of the Ptira of Avraham Avinu, that was when the Mechira of the Bechorah happened. Because that's when Eisav came from the field and he was very hungry, and Yaakov gave him the lentil soup. So how old was Yaakov and Eisav at that day? They were 15 years old. Because they were born when Yitzchak was 60, and Avraham Avinu was nifter when Yitzchak is 75, because Yitzchak was born when Avraham was 100 years old. So when Avraham was nifter at the age of 175, Yitzchak was 75 years old, Yaakov and Eisav were 15 years old. So they're less than the age of 20. So there will be a taino that limkor b'nichsei aviv to sell the nechos of the father, one has to be 20 years old. So if Eisav is coming to sell the Bechorah, which is a Yerusha, which is karkaris as well, so then maybe he has to be 20 years old. Says the Naftali Sva, that's why it says there in the Psukim, first of all, the kids were adults, as Rashi says there, they're above the age of 13. And then it says, Eisav ish Yodea tzayid ish sodeh, v'Yaakov ishtom yoshevu alim. So he explains, the Torah is telling you that Eisav was the wise person. He was Yodea tzayid ish sodeh, he knew how to handle business, he was the one outside there. Yaakov was a ishtom yoshevu alim. If Yaakov would be the one selling, then you had a taina. Yaakov is not 20 years old, and he's not smart enough to sell before the age of 20. But Eisav was that tells you that he had the wisdom. He had the wisdom, he could sell even though he's not 20 years old. That's the emphasis of the Torah to tell you this Agdama to Mechir Bechorah because of our sugya. So Givaldik, a connection of this sugya to the Parashat Shavua. Now, just to add that the Yiswach Moshe Teitelbaum of Satmar, he also brings this Ha'ara. He asks how Eisav can sell the Bechorah if he's not 20 years old. You have to be 20 years old. So he goes with a little different mahalach. He says these rules that we have in our Gemara only apply to Yisrael, not to Benoach. Benoach, it's Tava Aladinim, it's a different type of tzivurim. They don't have the halachas of Am Yisrael. And there, a Benoach can sell even though he's not 20 years old. So he goes on to say the following cheshbon. There's a discussion if the Avos and the children of the Avos were they Yisrael or the Benoach. He says the discussion was also in the time of the Avos. So Eisav may have chosen either to be Yisrael or Benoach. In the Gemara and Daf Zayin, in this Masechta Bava Basra, the Gemara there brings that Eisav had to be Ilas Naya Marosa. So as Tosis, but a Benoach is not also a Naya Marosa. So Tosis says, you're right, that's an Echanami. Eisav just did something which is not appropriate, but it wasn't an Isser. So it says the Eisav Moshe, that's the Cheshbon. Eisav says like this, if I consider myself a Yisrael, and I did a Be'ilo with Naya Marosa, so I'm Chayav Miso. I say, Hineni Oilech Lamus, I'm going to die. Elama, the reason I can exclude myself from the Miso is because I'm Benoach. So therefore, I'm not going to die. If I'm Benoach, I can sell the Bechorah. So Eisav basically did the cheshbon. I can sell the Bechorah. If I'm Yisrael, I'm going to die anyway because I'm going at a Be'il with Na'am Rasa. Elamah Benoach doesn't have a limited age of 20, so I can sell the Bechorah even though I'm not 20 years old. And he says, that's what Yaakov says, Mechor kayoyim is Bechor scholi. Sell me the Bechor today the way you're masik yourself, that you're a benoyach because you don't want to be killed for Naram also. Now you can sell me the Bechorah. Anyone who wants to join the Shomach Shava email list to WhatsApp group, please email shomachshava@gmail.com.